What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Glad to be back. Great to have you here. So, today we're going to be discussing this is pretty much an economics discussion, if you will. But you could take many other things from this or from the things that I have to say. Um, so, I want to begin by saying we used to play a game called Monkey in the Middle back in the days. So, we would recycle these games between like Simon Says, red light, green light, one, two, three, tag, freeze tag. You know what I'm saying? Games like that. And Monkey in the Middle was basically where it was three people, and two people would throw a ball to each other, right? And the person in the middle was considered the monkey, called the monkey. And the two people would throw the ball back and forth to each other, psyching the monkey out so that the monkey could not catch the ball. And when the monkey did catch the ball, they switched places with the person who allowed them to catch that ball. All right. And then they became the monkey. So, in my opinion, today's society, but more, not even today's society, but today's economy is like playing monkey in the middle. Um, so my aim here is to state how we're on Earth playing a game of give and receive, give and receive, and in general, those who don't give, or should I say, in general, those who don't receive, rather, will eventually take. It's just it's just nature. It's just the rules of survival, right? So, and you know what, this part of this uh, part of this presentation actually came from Gary the Numbers Guy, because I was watching a short of his, I believe, or a video. I can't really remember which one, but he was talking about the number eight, and just in case you want to know my take on that guy, I'm gonna say it very briefly. Like, he's passionate about what he does. I think he's necessary. You know what I'm saying? He's passionate about what he does. Like, you can tell that he enjoys helping people with the knowledge that he has. He's passionate about that, and you can see that. And I think that's important when someone takes on a task like that and promotes themselves so heavily to make an impact. Right? Those are the pros for me when it comes to Gary. The cons are probably his ego is very, it comes across as noticeable, and I'm not saying it's bad to have an ego. What I'm saying is his is out there. You know what I mean? He delivers some of those messages in a way that's just like, it's actually repelling instead of compelling. Um, and I don't like when he says, "Don't ever trust the government." Like, he has a slogan that says, "Don't ever trust the government." Right? You'll even hear some government people say, "Don't trust the government." But anyway, my point here being is, I'm biased in that situation, and I'm gonna tell you why. This is gonna add into what it is that I'm saying here. Right? The the United States of America has a tax system which extracts from people who generate wealth. The eighth house in astrology is also ruled by other people's money, which includes taxes. All right. So we have an extraction method that actually takes in order for people to receive. Now, I know some people can look at that and be like, and a lot do. And they say, well, they didn't earn it. They should not be subject to my money. But it goes back to what I'm telling you in the beginning. We're on earth playing a game of take, give and receive. So if you just receive, you got to understand that if you're on the receiving end, you got to understand that you receive from someone giving to you, right? So if you were to generate products and services, the money men would have to ensure that the people who buy your goods and services get money, right? That enables you as a merchant to receive. So it's only fair that those people are able to receive too. Now you may say, oh, well, they received the product and the service, but it's just like, is that it? Is that all that they are entitled to? Right? So this conflict, if you will, can go on for centuries as it has, until you come to realize that we're truly on this earth to play a game of give and receive. And the number 8 is actually reflective of that. So Gary did say one thing in his video that, there's a top half and then there's the bottom half of the 8. And what goes around comes around. It's a karmic number. And this is pretty much accurate. And it confirms what I'm saying here. Like, you have to have one side that has and one side that gives and one side that receives. He displayed it or he conveyed it in a way that states you either have it or you don't. I wouldn't totally agree with that. I think it's just a cycle that happens of give and receive. That's how I see it. Right? So now, I probably would agree with him, on the other hand, if my Jupiter was placed in a more convenient place, let's say in my 4th house, or even in the sign of Cancer. I would probably be more along the lines of siding with him, because, of course, I'm looking at this from an astrological perspective, and it's just like, okay, well, things would be more situated in my home life and my family life. So what I'm saying is some people are born into money, which is cool. I have nothing against being born into money. But it's like, if you look at it from my perspective, I got a Jupiter in the 12th house. And the 12th house is about government relief. The 12th house is about charity. So, and let me explain this to you, right? This is a very important note that, and I've mentioned this maybe once on my YouTube channel, is that some people's egos prevent them from receiving. Remember, we're here playing a game of give and receive on earth, and yet some people's egos interfere with them to be able to receive, because they think it's a handout, or they look at it as a handout, or like it's an act of undermining them, insulting their intelligence, saying that they're lazy, or implying that they can't accomplish goals and obtain their own money, obtain their own wealth. When, again, a person like me, right, not only do I have Jupiter in the 12th house, I have a plethora of planetary energy in the 12th house, which suggests that I chill out and be on the receiving end. I'm also a feminine sign. A feminine sign is, by default, receptive. Follow me on this now, right? So even me, myself included, I'm using real world examples here. I'd say the first half of my life, have I been living so far right now, that I had that same ego that would get in the way time and time again and prevent me from actually receiving, because I felt I'm capable. I can walk, I can talk, I'm an able-bodied man. Let me go do my thing. You know what I mean? And time again, I didn't respect that money. I mismanaged that wealth. I looked at people in a more judgmental manner until I realized the totality of what it is that's happening here. And even more, when I started learning astrology, it made much more sense to me of how I could still generate wealth, receive wealth, right? Instead of just making it, trading my labor for it, or not even just trading my labor for it, but fitting myself into societal conditioning of the traditional sense of how people earn money, at least from where I come from. So as those things began to change and I started realizing the freedom that comes with just accepting and embracing where my natal placements are, I said, you know what, this is not bad at all. Now, it's only bad, again, when the ego interferes and says, no, I gotta do it like them. You get motivated by the speeches and the gurus and everybody that comes around and says, no, you gotta do it like this. You want to get rich in 3 months? This is how you do it. listen, get your natal chart, obey. All right, it's yours. Like, but anyway, I might have digressed. Point being is, when you're not born into money, you need governments to assist you in extracting wealth from those who have. It's not supposed to be a have and have nots. Who else is going to be the heroes that's going to do that for you? And this is why I brought up the slogan that he uses about government, don't trust the government. If myself and other people included who are not close to their families, um, who don't come from money, who wasn't born into wealth, and I'm not saying it's it's two ways to look at that. You know what I'm saying? Some people actually look at it as like Planned Parenthood people look at it. You know what I'm saying? Well, you shouldn't bring the kids here. If you do bring the kids here, we're going to poison the food and we're going to set up abortion clinics everywhere to make sure your kids don't get here. You know, we might shoot them up with needles and shit to make sure that they don't live long enough. You know, depopulation methods is what I'm talking about. You know, so some people on that side looking at it like that, and some people, they grow up and they come to this understanding like, oh, okay, my parents may have not had it figured out. They may have gotten horny and thought childbirth is beautiful, and they'd figure it out as things go along. As long as they had love and they had hope, and things would be okay. And whether that was true or challenging throughout the child's life, that's their own story to tell, right? Nonetheless, they're here. So what do you do when you're here? And this is important because you got to realize that you're entering a war when you get here. And you got to find out what side of the war you're on. And people be like, oh, you don't got to choose sides. Yes, you do. I used to think that a little bit too. Like, oh, you don't got to choose a side. Yes, you do. Eventually you do. You got to know the sides. So, like I said, who's going to be, we may get a Robin Hood every here and there that goes out and on that adventure and says, we got to have, that village has to have, these people who don't have to have. Why do y'all have everything and these people don't? But for the most part, the government is those heroes that says, we're going to make sure that these people have if you have to. Now, again, this is United States of America culture. I don't know about everywhere else. That's not where my expertise lies. I'm talking about a tax system that extracts heavily. What we talking 40% of generated wealth. And I know we might say we're not going to get into the long discussion of the mega CEOs who dodge paying taxes and stuff like that. We're not going to get into that right now. I'm just saying, for the most part, I pay taxes too. That tax money is going to come back to me, and me being a 12 houser, a big 12 houser, I know exactly how that wealth comes back, how it gets spent, how it gets allocated, what pockets, where the resources are all at. I know all of that. I grew into that because I grew into myself from knowing my natal chart. Okay. So I'm accepting my lot in life, and I advise, or I'd recommend that you do the same. If you don't have your natal chart, go to the birth certificate place in your district, in your county, and ask them for a long form birth certificate, because you may have your birth certificate, it may be the short form one. I know in New York anyway, the short form birth certificates don't have the time of birth on their birth certificates. If that's the case, ask for the long form certificate, whatever state that you may reside in. All right. So again, 8th house extracts the wealth through a tax system. 12th house allocates those monies to people in need, whether it's through charity or whether it's through large institutions. All right. And in a lot of cases, that large institution is the government. Now, there's other things that are occurring in the economy that makes this monkey in the middle concept more flavorful, if you will. It's probably not the best word to use, but it puts more emphasis on the monkey in the middle concept. And the monkey in the middle is actually the middle class. All right. And if you've been paying close attention, you'll notice how the middle class and even the working class in some type of way is eroding. Or you see more articles popping up all over the place referring to how the middle class is living paycheck to paycheck. They have no money left over after they finish paying their bills. And a lot of these middle class people are making between, what's middle class considered? I think 75 to 150 grand a year, or 120 grand a year. And you may ask yourself, well, how is that even possible? Yeah, we could argue inflation, but it's just like, really? Like inflation? That what's happening is this: middle class people are making that type of money, and they're deciding that because they're making that type of money that they have to live a certain lifestyle, meaning they have to live in a good neighborhood, they have to be around good child care for their children, they got to pay for child care, they got to have his and her cars, the garage must be full, there must be a house instead of an apartment, there must be children, because why else have that type of wealth, you know? You want to share it with someone, and then you make children. And these are the ideals and the concepts. And don't get me wrong, this was sold to people, at least for the time that I've been on Earth. You know what I mean? You see it in every commercial. You see it in, I mean, from the cereal commercials to the car commercials. You see it, right? I got such OCD. Like, I don't even like traveling in cars that got like 5 seating areas, because it's like when I'm driving them, I'm like, it's so much room and space in there. I'd rather a McLaren. I'd rather be on a motorcycle, on a moped, on a bicycle, like, because I don't like, that's how much I don't like wasting stuff. You understand what I'm saying? And that mentality comes from realizing that when you have resources, the best way to allocate them is to support a lifestyle that makes you as light as possible, light as a feather. I think a biblical term goes, making it into heaven is like, the whole camel going through a needle. That's very reflective of a monumental structure that's in the eastern side of the world, to where there's actually like building structures that you go inside of, and the entrance of it is like the eye of a needle, but you have to lay your camel with the bags on the camel in front of the needle in order for you to enter, because the camel cannot fit in with the bags. Or at least if you're going to bring your camel in to get shelter, because it's so hot out there and the camel can get dehydrated if you leave it out there, you got to take the bags off of the camel to enable the camel to go inside of to squeeze inside of the entrance. You understand what I'm saying? So when it comes to these resources and you possess that type of mentality, you realize that, or you could realize if you was middle class, that you could not be categorized amongst those who are living paycheck to paycheck. You see, and I've noticed this, like when I was living in Flatbush some years back, Flatbush, Brooklyn, right? I observed the gentrification take place right before my eyes. I'm actually pro gentrification. And when witnessing this, you can tell the people who getting off of trains who have careers, and in contrast to people who may just be getting off the train for other reasons. You can tell by going through rush hour what's really going on. And sometimes I would see these executive looking people going to the most shabbiest looking places. And the first thing that struck me was like, wow, they're really not afraid. You know what I'm saying? Because Flatbush, you know anything about Flatbush, and I'm not putting Flatbush down. There's a lot of good things about Flatbush, but at the same time, Flatbush is tough. You understand? Nonetheless, these people were taking that risk, and you can just imagine that they make money, that the type of money that doesn't suggest that they have to live there. They're choosing to live there for a reason, for a purpose, because they got other stuff going on. They probably got a 5 to 10 year plan going on, maybe a 20-year plan going on, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna lower my cost, my living costs. You know what I'm saying? Now look, and this is for everybody watching, right? Check the statistics of your city. I know for New York City, if your rent is above 30% of your income, you're considered a burden to your city. I don't make the rules. This is what the government says. All right. So this is just something to take into consideration especially for people who don't have children. If you're thinking about having children, think about this statistic before you have children, so that when this transpires, you don't say, "Oh, it's the government's fault," or it's society's fault, or it's the CEO's fault. Like, this is a statistic that is stated statewide. That's what I'm saying. You can actually go online and look at your state to find out the statistic for your city and your state. So when we unpack that, you're like, okay, 30%, gotcha. So what's happening now that this monkey in the middle is disappearing, dissipating? When you look at the number 8, there was no middle for it anyway. Like the middle line is actually, it's the top half and the bottom half. My point here, and this is a theory, is that we should just be playing rich and poor, rich and poor, rich and poor, rich and poor. And my estimate, my guess is that we're going to be playing that for the coming future. It's like Hunger Games out this motherfucker. You understand what I'm saying? And you may look at that as like, that's not fair either. Like Hunger Games is crucial, it's critical, but look around. It's what's happening. And you might become a hero in the process. Maybe, I always root for the underdog. Always rooted for the underdog since I was small. And I actually probably believe that I am an underdog too. And I'm okay with that. Like I don't have, again, my ego is not, I don't not have a fight. I am cool with being who I am, But I've noticed that a lot of people who are not being cool with who they are, and I could just tell. I'm an empath. I can just tell that they will go above and beyond to prove something to other people. These are more along the lines of the extroverts who need external validation in order to feel good about themselves. They will go above and beyond and spend whatever cost or, do whatever it is that they must do to receive that validation. And it's not even a judgment. It's just calling it like it is. And a lot of the times, those are the givers as well. A lot of masculine energy is generated for the purpose of giving. It's just in your celestial DNA. It's just who those people are, who we are. I still give, even though I'm very receptive and on the receiving end more than the giving end, if you ask me. But it's okay because I also realize that there's other people in positions who are by default more of the givers. So why not both play our positions? Like I have nothing against the rich. I have nothing against the rich. That's not my beef. You know what I mean? If there's anything that's conflicting with me is when individuals are not able to obtain the information and the education necessary for them to see things from their perception and then shift it into perspective. Because when anyone and everyone does that, they will realize that they're just playing their part on earth in a game of give and receive. Now let's talk about something called opposing locality. All right. It's when merchants mobilize immigrants to, obtain employment from not from overseas, like from another country, right? FDI, foreign direct investment. And they obtain this employment for lower pay than the national standard is. So if you go look on, what's the name of that website? Salary.com, I believe it is. There's a few others too. You go in there, you'll see the national standard for whatever position you're being employed for. And a lot of companies are adopting this method of, obtaining employees that they can distribute lower pay to. And really it's not supposed to even be legal. But we live in the United States of America, big charity, big givers. So it's just like, these people need a place to stay, That's just us. I'm not gonna drag it out and start a debate about that either, right? But this is done, opposing locality is a method, and it's done for two reasons: to marginalize certain ethnic or community groups, or in an ability to increase profit margins, right? And companies utilize this through two ways: through greenfields and through mergers and acquisitions. Now, greenfields is when the foreign direct investment comes to the other country and they start on some grassroots shit. Like, you know what I mean? They get into the streets and they build it from the ground up. They're not asking anyone except for the people that they know, right? You might have a friend in England. You go to England and you just set up shop based upon what you know with your friend out in England and who they know. Now, the downside of that is it's less protection. You might get protection from the locals, right? But you may face some heat from the government, or you may face some heat from other locals from different counties and districts who see you setting up shop there, and they start doing their homework, and they're like, oh, y'all building a corporation that's going to employ 1,000 people, but you're only hiring people in this area. That's not fair. We want to be hired too. We want to do this too. Or you're only hiring white people. That's not fair. We want to be hired too. You're only hiring Mexicans. That's not fair. We want to be hired too. You understand what I'm saying? So the other way is mergers and acquisitions, which gets more protection, is usually utilized via government. So these companies that are overseas, they come to the United States, for example, and they say, look, I want to set up shop of a company here. I want to merge with with one of your established companies or something like that. Have a parent company, then a subsidiary over here, but I want to do it so that my company is protected. I don't want them spraying graffiti all over the walls and mugging people in front of the joint. So the government will step in and facilitate the employment for that company. You understand what I'm saying? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to offer more incentive for those employees. And it's not going to be structured in a way that the migrants or the immigrants can get employed because they don't have the proper documentation in order to be employed. You get what I'm saying? It's more of a by the book method. So nonetheless, though, opposing locality is something that happens, and I'm not saying that government are never involved with opposing localities that don't happen through mergers and acquisitions either, but I don't have no proof to substantiate that they are. I'm just telling you how it's naturally structured. And so let's get back to greenfields for a moment, though. Like an example of that is I see a lot of construction. Again, this is boots on the ground stuff. This is real world examples. I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I see, what I observe. Like I'll go through the city and I'll see a lot of construction sites up all over the place, and a lot of the Mexicans get to work there. And this wasn't always like that. You understand what I'm saying? This wasn't always like that 20 years ago. But now you see the Mexican ethnic group obtain a lot of this employment. Now that's an example of a greenfield. They get here how they get here, right? You use your imagination on that. The point though is that they're not documented to receive the work. But nonetheless they get it. But best believe they're not getting the same amount of pay that other people who are in the unions and other people who are citizens of America obtain. You understand what I'm saying? Nonetheless, these Mexicans, they will accept the employment, do the job. They'll even have people that they know in the city. Like I said, remember I described what a greenfield is, that can afford them a house to stay in and say, look, we got a house for you to stay in. We got a house for you and your cousins and everybody to stay in, right? So they'll pile in that one house. They'll all chip in to pay what they need to pay. And they might even get a discount to stay there because the people who are in power that put them in position probably bought the whole house from the giddy up anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's probably paid off, And it might not be the best house, but nonetheless, it's something for them to come and do what they need to do, right? So they might even give them a discount on the rent and all of that. So all of these Mexicans, they families, they pitch in to do what they got to do. It leaves them excess cash to the point where they now have enough resources to pool, make side businesses, taco stands. Their girls be coming with the fruit stands and all that, going to the construction sites, which is smart, by the way. Even though they face scrutiny as well, because what happened, again, this is greenfield stuff, so the government can intervene and be like, no, you can't sell those stuff here. You don't have no permit, no paperwork, and then you see how that happens, right? So this is important to know, because if you have any type of conflict with what you observe, then you can understand why this is happening and how this is happening and how you can better position yourself to fit in to do this stuff. And another thing that I noticed is the economy is shifting towards the gig economy, and it's been doing that for some time now, maybe over the last decade. But the gig economy is like this. It's like these corporations or the particular corporations that I'm speaking about, they know that the competition has increased so much now because of greenfields that they're like, you know what? I'll just pay the lowest amount of money that I possibly can. And because somebody's going to fill this position regardless. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're like, I'm not doing that for that amount of money, they're like, okay, we know that. We're going to have somebody who's not even documented to do that. And this is, this can be, this can come across as offensive, and that's not my intent. You know what I mean? But I've noticed, like, the food delivery guys, the food delivery people, they don't even speak the language. Like, they'll pop up at the door, they just flash the receipt to you and, do what they got to do, and they on their way. I know they're not documented and stuff like that. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm educated on this stuff. I know what's going on, But from an idealist perspective, if you're big on nationalism and if you're big on patriotism, I can see how one can be triggered by this. And this is where I say it becomes the Hunger Games, because this is where you actually look at this and be like, well, you know what? This is how I'm going. I'm going to still do this independent contracting thing because I don't want to fall back into the go to the workplace type of employment. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't. A lot of people never initially subscribed to that. They just fell into something that was already in place, and they, in order to survive, they did it. And some people work at places that they actually enjoy, but some people it's just like too burdensome, 8 hours out of the day, and they want you to, the managers want you to pat them on the butt and all that to get a 15-cent raise, and it's just like, it's too much. Come on, get out of here, fuck out of here, right? So what happens is the breakaway society comes into play, and the independent contracting thing is so attractive because you set your own hours, you become your own boss, and it's freeing. It's so that feeling of independence pretty much trumps even the additional dollars that you might have been earning from a corporation who paid you a salary. The feeling of independence may trump that. And you might, in a lot of gig economies, you can work excessive hours. Like, if you wanted to work more than 8 hours a day, you could, So that's a bonus as well. But before I divert too far away from my point is corporations are figuring out, like, you know what? For convenience, the companies that are service companies and convenience companies, like fast food deliveries and stuff like that, and there's so many more now that emphasize convenience. Those are the companies that are lowballing the most, and they're letting this community competition thrive at, like, and I'm not even going to say thrive, that's not the right word, but compete for, right? But you find your way. Nonetheless, you find your way. You figure out how to utilize your resources, because there has to be a solution for these things. You know what I mean? For example, like, I left YouTube. Maybe I should start saying that differently. I stopped producing long form content for YouTube, right? Because of the opportunity cost. I started weighing the opportunity cost. So this is a solution for what we're facing here. I weighed the opportunity cost, and I'm just like, hold on now. I'm aware that there are YouTubers who make more money off of me through advertising money, right? I'm aware of that. And I would have to normally keep producing content at a rapid rate to catch up to those influencers, or to catch up to those journalists and content creators. But me personally, I'd rather wait for readings, because readings pay more. They pay me more. I give a more qualitative product than I do on the YouTube videos. And it takes so much out of me spending all of the time that it takes to generate a YouTube video, edit it, and post it anyway, that it's just much more much more better for me, my well-being, everything included, to receive a higher amount of money. Because when I do the math, it's just like, okay, ad revenue comes in. It's like, okay, but it does not compare to what one reading can do. I might spend 2 to 3 hours doing a reading for. You understand what I'm saying? So it's much more better to do it that way than to squander my opportunity cost, um, with a hope to go viral. You know what I mean? Um, that's my business model, though. That's what works for me. So this is just a tool or an example that can assist you in doing the same type of thing. Um, but also, again, this is important to observe how predatory pricing is strongly correlated with fast-paced, cash conversion cycles and low-value items. So another solution would be to, when you're doing your side thing, first of all, 7 streams of income. Aim for it. I know you might have seen some gurus say that. That's one. That's a guru statement I can actually agree with. Look for 7 streams of income. Um, and when you see that these companies that are starting to lowball people to do the service, you say, you know what? Let me get in the industry of high qualitative products, high quality products. It's like Rolls Royce, it's like Lamborghini, it's like, and of course, yes, it costs a lot of money to get those parts and to get those cars fixed and this, that, and the third. But it's like, do you want a more qualitative machine or do you want a less qualitative machine? And not only that, when you're on the merchant side of things, how would you feel selling a low quality product, low quality item in comparison to a high quality item? It does something to the soul as well. Now, some people are just, I get it. They're so treacherous. They don't mind selling you something that's going to crumble in the next month or so. And they're going to say, you get what you pay for. I mean, not the actually company person, but from the outside looking in, people will say you get what you pay for, right? On the contrary, you got high qualitative items that people value more. And you say, you know what, it's worth the money, even worth the wait if you got to save up to actually obtain that item, that product, right? Um, and predatory pricing can't get you there because it's like people are utilizing slave labor methods and stuff like that in order to make these products be priced at such low cost. I think I've seen this new company pop up called Temu, and the price that they're selling those products at, I'm like, they gotta derive from sweatshops. I don't have no proof of this. This is just my opinion. But I'm like, how in the world can they price something that low? They gotta have some type of something going on with that. You know what I mean? That the United States of America wouldn't tolerate. So I would say to identify these things and adjust. You know. Um, Also, know where you fit into society. Like, know if you have the type of personality that is more of a boss, more of an independent contractor, more of a solo act, more of a person that needs the freedom to be able to make your own schedule and move out and about, and you'll start feeling the independence and embodying it to the point where you're like, this is my life. Like, you're gonna feel like you're living your actual life instead of trying to fit into a mold. And a lot of the times it's just for finances, to obtain more finances. But if you've ever been at a job that you totally despised, you know the feeling of that. And if you have a more individualistic personality, when you compare that to being your own boss and being free to do what you still like, but how you're able to do it, you know that taking a pay cut is worth it. It's worth it. And it'll free you up the opportunity to do anything you want to do on the side, even if you fail at it numerous of times until you get it right. So be it. But that feeling of freedom is more important. Um, Now, you got to realize the earth element as well. Um, when we're dealing with earth elements, we're talking about gradual growth. And companies are strongly correlated with the earth element. And once Capricorn energy gets to Capricorn, right, It wants the status. It wants to be renowned for having a structure that utilizes people. It's like harvesting energy. That's the wicked way to say it, right? But it's true. And more than anything, Capricorn companies or, corporations, they want to stick around for a long time. So then they start shifting the ideologies of the earth signs and that earth element, and they start having this discussion. Well, how do we stay around for a long time if everything around us is changing at rapid paces, especially technology, and Capricorn is such a rigid sign, and Taurus is so stubborn that it doesn't like change? What are we supposed to do? And then Virgo energy gets the Virgoing. You see, it's the Virgo policy that really says, you know what? Because of efficiency, Virgo steps in for the efficiency of the corporation and steps in and says, if they come into the conference room, they're going to say, look, I've looked at everything, right? I analyzed everything. And the thing that's happening here is we're paying too much money for stuff. If you want to stick around, you're going to have to cut some of this stuff out, And I've done reports on companies that have ruined their product line because they wanted to spend money on new things to reflect what the competition was doing. Totally fucked that shit up. But here nor there, I digressed a bit. The Virgo energy gets the Virgo, and they're like, look, some of these costs got to get cut. That's how we're going to be able to stay around. And then you got to imagine the look on a Taurus's face. You got to change something? You can imagine the look on a Capricorn's face. You mean my structure is going to be altered? My rigidness is being questioned here, is being challenged, right? And I'm not really talking about people, but I'm just talking about if a company could talk, right? So the Virgo says, well, yeah, because the Virgo is adaptable. The Virgo is mutable. And it says, look, how much do you need this? How much do you need this? And they start doing the utility cost, the term utility cost. How much value does this cost bring to the company? Not, pizza parties on Friday, But I would say, and I don't, in some instances it's the worst, but maybe not in all. This is just something that you need to take away with this. Human employees are the first to get cut. It's sad to say, but it's true. And you could just realize this by looking at the situation with all of the major companies just recently, where they started firing thousands of employees. We're talking about the top most efficient companies in the United States of America fired thousands of people, right? You trying to tell me they couldn't cut something here or shut down a couple of stores over here? No, they chopped thousands of employees. And it's weird because they paid, some of these companies pay these employees so much, and like I said, ping pong tables and, coffees and bagels for free and everything. A person like me, I'd been like, yo, you can't consider cutting these ping pong tables the fuck up out of here? You want to actually fire the people? I like a lot of these people. Anyway, here nor there, right? I'd say that's where the Capricorn energy comes in. It says, okay, we used you up. We harvested your energy. You can go now because I got to stick around. I need my status, And if we're talking about a CEO at that, which is going to be at the pinnacle of the mountain, the goat that climbs to the top of the hill, you can see where I'm coming from with that. And again, I'm not talking about people. So if you're a Capricorn or you're a Taurus, you're a Virgo, don't be mad, But do identify some of your characteristics by default and know that corporations is the structuring and building of corporations is an earth element, and that's how a lot of these situations occur because of that. And the costs get cut. The costs get cut, and it's just like, nothing is bigger than the program. You understand what I'm saying? In order to survive and stick around, they're playing a game of survival too. The same way that a Cancer energy is playing a game of survival based upon the moon. The corporations are playing a game of survival based upon Saturn, a structure that's supposed to stick around and stay around, and is opposing the family structure, right? We'll take your people out of your home to come work for us, and we fuck around and stay around longer than you and your family. We might break up your family There's families that crumble because they spend too much time at work. The parents are too much at work. The kids are free to do whatever they want. In return, the relationship dynamic between parents and children suffer. They're against each other. Now the children are raised to come up and try to have status instead of home training. You get what I'm saying? You know the story. I'm not going to drag this anymore though. This is where I'm going to leave this for now anyway. And this is just to put emphasis on plutocracy and how things are shifting in the economy right now. I do also want to say this too. Something that I observed is that, and this is somewhat terrifying if we're looking at, movies that have shown, what do you call that? Like dystopian societies. And like I said earlier, the Hunger Games, right? I've noticed that the communities are being restriction of movement. That's the term that I'm looking for. Restriction of movement is being heavily emphasized in communities now, to where it's like decreasing carbon footprints is the aim and the goal now of governments, and not even just governments, but the institutions that are not governments, but they are so big and they're parading around like they are actually governments, but they're not. You basically know what I'm talking about. And their aim is to restrict the movement in communities. So what's happening and what is to happen here is that people are not even going to be able to afford to fly here, fly there, fly here, fly there, for the sake of a minimum carbon footprint. And then the flip side to that, right? The eight, right? That side. The flip side to that is some of the moguls get to fly on private jets that do more harm to the economy as far as a carbon footprint goes than anything. You get what I'm saying? So that ignites the Hunger Games mentality in those communities. So you'll notice there's been an attack on real estate first. Houses are so high right now, it just doesn't even make sense to buy a house. People are just buying houses to hoard wealth, and then they're taking a gamble there because it might not go the way that they intended it to go. It's more of a chance that it doesn't at this present moment in time. And then the next attack is on the automobile, right? The automobile costs so much to have a note right now. It's not worth it. When you look at the alternatives, you can actually, there's more bike lanes opening up, and now bus lanes are getting more lead way and more right away, and you see this happening, and there's mopeds and there's scooters all over the place now, and you start doing the math, and you're like, I see what's going on. And now again, there's a flip side to this. I'm not saying I'm pro or con of what's happening either. I'm just explaining it to you because there's two ways to look at this. You could look at it as like, oh, more independent freedom. Actually going, the breakaway society is actually breaking away from the corporation, right? Yeah, I'll work for you. I'll buy my scooter and I'll do my runs for you. You know what I'm saying? I get my money. Like, sometimes, like, I've done gig work myself. You know what I'm saying? I've participated in that economy myself. I done made 300% profits. I'm still making 300% profits off of some contracts. I always speak to people in percentages because, especially when I'm talking to people wealthier than me, because a lot of the times they want to know how many millions you made, and I'm just like, settle down, calm your tits. Like, let me talk to you in percentages, because it doesn't matter how much I've made. When people want to know how much you made, they usually want to offer you credit. I've noticed. So it's just like, look, let's just talk in percentages. Let me tell you how good I am at obtaining large profits in any and every endeavor that I take on. So my point is, if you're being an independent contractor and you're being your own boss and you're restricted to this community type work, you can have a big takeaway in this, especially if you're a community involved person that loves community and you thrive off of the people around you. You live in the urban cities and you actually like it. This is for you. But if you don't, and you're actually more of a recluse, if you're more introverted and you're more not on the masculine or giving side of the spectrum, you may want to get away from this. You might feel closed in and become claustrophobic from this and say, "Oh, wait a minute now. Now I really got to sell more high quality products at this pricing so I can obtain this profit margin so I can get the fuck up out of Dodge." That's going to be the new freedom. Can you afford to even leave out of your community? And for how long? Are you just going to an Airbnb a few towns over in the suburbs and you got to come back and the Cinderella shoes disappear and come off? Or are you going to be able to purchase property over there because you're scaling a business and this, that, and the third? You know what I mean? So that's the real Hunger Games element that should be paid attention to and focused on. You will want to know what side of the spectrum you're going to be on, and what extent does freedom go to. Because mind you, even the wealthiest of people, they want to give. They want to give. They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. They really don't have the time to spend it. So they're like hiring other people to tell them where and how to spend the money. As long as it makes more money, of course. But still, they're willing to take that risk. They're willing to take that gamble, even if it doesn't make any money. Because what's the point? Their ideology and their celestial DNA is for them to give. And it's still a back and forth. They are able to receive through sales, through government contracting, through grants, only to give it, to dole it right back out. So I will also say this too. In the name of Taurus energy, save some type of money. 69% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved in their savings account. That speaks volumes, because leverage, if you don't have any leverage, you can't really get into these discussions and say no. Sometimes even say yeah. You got to have some type of leverage to be able to say, well, look, I got the type of security where I can say I'm not coming in today, or I'm not doing this today. Or the type of leverage and security that says I can make my own hours. I can work whatever day I want to and not work the other day. You know what I mean? And this is why there is no middle class. This is why the monkey in the middle has been obliterated, because they have not said, you know what, I'm going to put this to the side so that when next year comes around and they start giving out plaques for how much money I made them and stuff like that, I'm going to be talking about a raise. And if they don't talk to me nice, if they don't start telling me things I want to hear, I'm going to be talking about resignation. I'm going to be talking about a 2-week notice because I got fuck you money saved up. It's a Taurus thing, because in order for Taurus energy to be that stubborn, you have to evaluate yourself to the point where you say, how much do I take care of me? And when you take care of you to a degree that speaks volumes, basically have leverage. I don't mean to fluff it up that much, but then you're able to negotiate any situation from that point, So that's what I got for y'all. Until next time, I'm out.